Okay, so now I'm going to go through the rest of the tools. I'm going to describe some of them to you and then explain their use. And then we will come back later and have exercises that more carefully allow you to understand their use. So I'm going to start at the top. The move tool allows me to move objects on the screen. So if I click on the move tool and I click on my canvas, I can move my artwork around inside of the canvas, right? That's what the move tool is for. My marquee selection tool, and notice that there's additional tools underneath, rectangular, optical. The marquee tool allows me to make a rectangularly shaped selection. So if I want to apply an adjustment or apply paint to the whole image, then I don't need to make a selection. I don't need to make a mask. But when I want to differentiate one part of my image from another, when I want to discriminate, I need to have a way to define one area safely from another. And I can either use a selection or a mask for that. So if I grab that rectangular marquee tool and drag that over the canvas, I have told Photoshop that the area inside of here is the area that I want to apply an edit to. And whatever edit it is only going to go into that region. So if I were, for instance, to pick a different color that's not currently in my canvas, and I grab my paintbrush and paint, you'll see that the paint goes up to the edge of that selection and not over it. Any adjustment I make will only go into that selected region. And that's why we make selections. So for instance, if I go to image, I go to adjustments, I'm going to use hue saturation, and I'm going to click the colorize option in the lower right-hand corner. And you'll see that the area that's being modified is only the area that's within the selected area. I'm going to unclick colorize, and I'm going to drag the hue slider, and you'll see that once again, the only area that's being modified is the area within the selection. I'm going to click cancel, and I'm going to go up to select, and I'm going to do a deselect. So let's talk about selections, right? When I make a selection, it's so that I can edit one part of my document and not another. And there are three ways to turn selections on and off, right? I'm going to grab my selection tool. I'm going to deploy my selection tool, and I can turn off that selection. It's just as important to know how to turn it off as it is to turn it on. I can go up to select, and I can choose deselect. I'm going to grab that rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to drag it down again. How else can I turn off a selection? Anytime I have any of the selection tools up here, the rectangular marquee tool, the lasso tool, any of the object selection and quick selection tools, if I have that tool selected and I click in the light gray area on the outside, that will automatically turn off a selection. Okay, how else can I turn off a selection? I'm going to drag over the canvas again, and I can use a keyboard command to turn off the selection. Control D or deselect, okay? That will turn off a selection. So now we know how to deploy a selection. We know what a selection is for. We know how to use a selection, right? And basically, half of the class is going to be learning how to refine various types of selection modes and then transition from selection modes into using various types of masks, okay? So we're going to come back and spend more time on that. Lasso tool, drag that around the canvas, and I'm making an irregularly shaped selection, and the only part of the document that's going to be edited is the part within that selected region. And we'll come back to the other selection tools in a second. Okay, we're going to come back to the crop tool in a second, and we'll come back to the frame tool. The frame tool allows you to, the crop tool allows you to crop your image, and we're going to spend some time understanding different mechanics on cropping. The frame tool allows you to create placeholder frames for images. We'll come back to that. We've already covered the eyedropper. We'll spend a special session on the spot healing patch content aware move and red eye tool. We'll come back to those later. We've worked with the paintbrush, and then underneath the paintbrush is the pencil, color replacement, mixer brush, and we'll come back to those later. But pencil, basically the difference between the pencil and the brush is the pencil has a solid nib and it's always the same dimension. Okay, it's always the same size. All right. Okay. The clone stamp and pattern stamp tool allow me to pick up data wholesale and move it from one area to another. We'll come back and work with the clone stamp and pattern stamp tool later. We have what's called the history, an art history brush. The history brush allows me to paint from a previous state into a current state. So it's a way of applying edits that I've made to my document and then reapplying them again later over time. And then the art history brush allows me to create paint-like applications of brushes that are similar to the kind of stippling or patterning that you might get like in oil paint. And then we already talked about the eraser tool, where you just grab it and you can erase from the background. And remember that all of these are being applied with a brush, and I can control the size of the brush, make it bigger or smaller. Next, underneath that is the gradient, paint bucket, and 3D material drop. So the gradient tool allows you to create a color that transitions to multiple colors. And the paint bucket tool allows you to do a color dump, allows you to dump color onto the canvas. We'll come back, work on those just a second. 3D material drop tool is part of the 3D landscape, and that we won't work on until we get way into the advanced portion of the class. We've already worked with the blur, sharpen, and smudge. We've already worked with the dodge, burn, and sponge tool. Now, these 4 tools down here, the pen tool, the type tool, the direct selection tool, and the line tool are a special suite of tools that are vector. And vector is a different type of drawing system. Right now, we're working in a raster system of art, which gives us pixels on the screen. And these tools allow us to use a different system for drawing. So we'll have a special session where we work with the vector tools in Photoshop. It's a different system. We'll come back to those later. So that's the pen tool, the type tool, the path selection, direct selection tool, the vector shapes. Those are vector tools. We'll come back to those. They demand special attention. Okay, I'm going to close that palette. Okay, then we have our hand and our zoom, and we understand how to use the zoom tool. Click on it, click on your canvas to zoom in, Alt click to zoom out, or Control plus and Control minus. And it's really a Command plus and Command minus. It's a good idea to get used to using your keyboard for zooming in and out, because then you don't have to let go of whichever current tool you're using. Like if I'm using the history brush or I'm using a clone stamp, I don't have to click off of it to click on the magnifying glass. Right, we already talked about the idea of being able to edit the toolbar. We'll get to that later. And then down here at the bottom, I have this little double arrows with swaps the foreground color with the background color. And then this little button here loads black and white into the foreground and background color swatches. This button here allows me to turn on a mask. Okay, it's called a quick mask. We'll come back to that. Don't click on it just yet. We'll come back to that. And we'll learn how to use that quick mask in upcoming exercises when we get into our masking. And then this button here allows me to change the screen mode. And so I can click there to go to full screen. I hit escape to get out. And I can click and hold it down and choose standard screen mode, full screen mode with menu bar, or full screen mode. And when it says, hey, you're going to go full screen mode, I can get out of it by pressing F. And that'll take me out. So what that full screen mode is for is when you want to isolate your art and look at it, like you got your boss coming over and you want to show them something to make it look really cool, tap that full screen mode button, right? Tap F again, and then say, hey, you know, what do you think? And that way they can see it looks really nice in the black background, and then just tap F again, and you're back into your edit mode, okay? Let's stop there. We're gonna come back on the other side. We've gone through the tools, the toolbar. We've used half of them. We're gonna use the rest of them over the next couple of weeks. And as we go on, we're gonna add more and more and more. Thank you.